Okay, so what I've got going on here is I've got head tracking working in Star Wars Squadrons, and I know that Star Wars Squadrons doesn't support head tracking, and you can't even use your head tracker to control free look, but it is possible to get it working. And the way this works is that you basically use some third-party drivers to run the game in Steamvr, and to, basically you have to get it to output a two-dimensional image to your monitor and to use your head tracker to control the perspective in VR. So in this video I'm going to sort of show you guys how I got that working. There's basically two steps. You've got to change some in-game settings, and you've got to get the third-party software working. So let's go over it now. I know a lot of people wanted TrackIR in this game, and I think that hopefully this will be the solution for them. So for the in-game settings, because we're running this in Steamvr, it doesn't have any keyboard and mouse support built into it, but it does have HOTAS support. So to get this game working, you're going to have to map absolutely every single control in the game to a HOTAS or to a joystick input. If you have a HOTAS with lots of buttons, this will be really easy to do. You just have to make sure that none of the buttons are mapped to keyboard keystrokes. Like you don't want to have your hat switch mapped to the arrow keys. You've got to have it mapped to joystick, hat switch, up, down, left, right, etc. If you're keyboard and mouse players, it'll be a bit more of a challenge. I can think of a couple of solutions. One would be to try to use VJoy to emulate joystick outputs with your keyboard and mouse. The other thing is there may be other third-party tools that'll enable you to have some keyboard and mouse input in Steamvr. I don't personally know how to do that, but if you have a big HOTAS, you'll be set. The other in-game setting we have to change is the audio settings. We have to go to the bottom of the audio settings and look at this keep audio in background. We have to enable that just because you won't have sound. Otherwise, it's just a glitch with the third-party driver that we're using, I guess. Okay, so before we get into the third-party software, the first thing you're going to need to do is actually to install Steamvr if you haven't already. If you own the game on Steam, it's pretty straightforward. I don't actually have this on Origins, so I don't know how SteamVR and Origins work together. That's a little shortcoming of mine. But for Steam players, just install Steamvr. Okay, so for the third-party software, I've got links in the description to the GitHub download pages. If you haven't used GitHub before, it might be a little counterintuitive, so you want to scroll down until you reach this part that says download. And once you're there, you're going to want to download this top link here that says, well, in this case, it's TrueOpenVR 0.7.2 portable.zip. Same thing for the Steamvr driver. That link, download, and then you're going to want the one that says manual.zip. Okay, so now that you've got those downloaded, I'll just take a second to talk about what these pieces of software actually are. They're not just designed to allow us to use TrackIR in games that are VR only and don't support TrackIR. What they're really for is for people that want to build their own DIY VR headsets. And so there's a lot of functionality in there in addition to what we need to just run head tracking in Star Wars Squadrons. The main piece of functionality that might be an issue, this is sort of one of the big caveats about all this, is that it does have mouse emulation abilities for that DIY VR experience. The problem is that does trigger a malware flag on some people's systems. There is malware that also tries to emulate human interface devices like mice and keyboards in order to take over people's systems. So this does flag that on some people's systems. I'm very confident that it's a false positive. It's just that, some of those malware softwares are sort of overly cautious, but I'm not a programmer. I can't guarantee that. So the main point is to use this at your own risk. The source code for this is available in those GitHub links. So if you're a coder or you're somebody that knows about software, I'd strongly encourage you to look through the source code. And if you're able to sort of verify that it is safe, or heaven forbid you see there actually might be a problem with this, post that in the comments of this video or in the Reddit thread that I'm going to link. But now with that out of the way, now that you've got these downloaded, the first thing you're going to want to do is copy this top folder, this TrueOpenVR 0.72 portable folder, into your program files folder. Not your program files x86 folder, just your program files folder. And once you'll be doing all this in your programs files folder, but once you're in there, you're going to want to run this settings.exe. Okay, so in settings.exe, what you just want to do is select driver, and you're going to want to select FreeTrack and hit apply. Now, this is sort of where caveat number 2 comes in. I'm personally using a DIY head tracking setup, which uses I'm using FaceTrackNoIR. Other ones are FreeTrack itself. If you have a name brand TrackIR, I don't know if it's going to work with this because I don't have one and I can't test it. I think it will work. If it doesn't work, it should be easy to get it working. You may just want to download FreeTrack and see if you can use your TrackIR camera to run through the FreeTrack program, which would make it work in this context. The next step is to open this TrueOpenVR Steamvr 0.5.1 manual folder and copy this TOVR folder into your Steam drivers directory. Okay, so for me on my computer, this is the path to the Steamvr downloads directory. It's this PC, Windows C, program files x86 this time, Steam, Steam Apps, Common, Steamvr, and drivers. So I've got that TOVR folder in the drivers folder. We're going to open that up. We're going to go to resources, settings, and then we're going to open this default VR settings config file. We're going to have to change a few settings in there to get this working the way we want it to work. Okay, so for the config file, on the left-hand side, I've got the default config file that you're going to download. On the right-hand side, I've got the what you actually want it to look like to run in head tracking. So there's a few important settings to change. The first one is the stereo mode. You want to change that from true to false. The next important ones are this distortion K1 and K2. You want to set both of those values to 0. The zoom width, this is basically what controls your field of view. This FOV setting doesn't seem to do anything. It's really this zoom width, zoom height that does that. Zoom 1.0 is no zoom at all. You're going to find that when you turn your head at zoom 1.0, there's going to be a lot of screen tearing at either side of the screen. So you definitely want to zoom in a little bit. I've been running at 0.6. That's about the sweet spot for an Imperial fighter because you're not going to have a lot of dead space either side of the screen when you're doing that. You can increase that to like 0.7 if you're flying an A-wing a lot. The only problem with that is that it's going to make your reticle look a little bit far away. So the next important settings to change are these render width, render height, and window width, window height. Those have to match the resolution of the monitor you're using. So the default setting for whatever reason is 1080 by 1080. I'm running a 1080p display, so I've got it to 1920 by 1080 in both of these settings. If you're running 1440p, you're going to have to change it to the corresponding resolution. Same for 4K, same for anything like that. And basically that's it. Once you've got these settings looking something like this should work. But definitely as you're going, play with these different zoom levels, etc., are going to maybe help to personalize this for what you actually like to do. So I forgot to mention that with those config files, they might not automatically be associated to Notepad. If you're having trouble opening them, just obviously right-click on them and say Open with Notepad, and you can get to the last step that we were there before. So the next thing you're going to want to do is launch your head tracking software, whatever it is. As you can see, I'm using FaceTrackNoIR. And you want to make sure that the protocol you're using is the FreeTrack protocol. You don't want to be using any of the other ones like Tobii Eye Tracker or anything like that. That third-party driver does support the FreeTrack protocol. So once your head tracker is on and working and fully operational, launch Steamvr and make sure that, again, with you running FreeTrack, that it actually does work. You may have to tweak it, you may have to play with it, you may have to invert some axes or play with some dead zones or something like that. But this is basically a good way to test it. There's going to be a window if you were to Alt-Tab around that will be called the headset window. You want to make sure that the Windows focus is always on that. If you don't do that, you get this red screen like this. So you have to click to get back into the headset window. And just launching the Steamvr app and looking around with your head tracker is the way I like to test this and kind of make sure it works and play with the zoom and play with the head tracking software, make sure all the drivers work. And once you're happy with that, then what I would do is just open the desktop version of Star Wars Squadron and launch the VR version from within the game. It's a little bit easier than having to try to launch it from within Steamvr when you don't have any controls or anything mapped for the Steamvr itself. Another issue that I sometimes run into is that the TOVR driver will crash on closing. And when that happens, Steamvr runs in a bit of a safe mode where it actually disables that driver. So you're not going to be able to open the game again. If you try to open the game, it'll say, please plug in your VR headset. What you need to do then is just to go to the Manage Add-ons section of the menu and unblock the TOVR driver. So basically that's it for this. Hopefully this will work for you guys. Big shout out to R57Zone, who's the author of the third-party drivers that are used in this video and that are linked to on GitHub. And just let me know if this works for you guys. I'm going to try to be as supportive as possible of people that try to get this working. And, if you have issues, I'll try to help you through them. I'm also going to post these on Reddit to see if people there have input and maybe even some improvements on this. Because this problem of TrackIR not being supported in games that do support VR is, like space games that support VR, is actually bigger than just Star Wars Squadrons. It also applies to games like No Man's Sky, where, again, you really do want to have TrackIR in your cockpit-based sims. So hopefully this will be a solution for a lot of people. Thanks.